We have been discussing a lot about technology since morning related to cybersecurity, and that clearly indicates that enterprises are having a very complex infrastructure for which they are looking forward to not one, two, but multiple cutting edge technologies to ensure that their infrastructure is secure. And this panel will be all about discussing those cutting edge technologies that enterprises are evaluating, adopting, and we'll be discussing more in depth as we move forward with ISKCON's panel discussion. And with this, I would, at the very beginning, start the most common and one of the oldest one, distributed systems and cloud. So enterprises are becoming more distributed. The cloud adoption has gone above, and we have clearly seen from the insights also that the cloud maturity gap is still there year on year, and nowhere we are seeing that percentages getting less in terms of the bridge. So, as we are looking forward to technologies such as SASE to unify the network and security controls while ensuring compliances across the hybrid environment, with this thought, Kumar, I'll come to you. Considering your experience and the way you have seen the enterprises grow, what is your perception about this? That how organizations should leverage SASE for this unified network and ensuring that all the controls are there in a safe zone?
Sure. Thanks, Pratik. Am I audible? Yeah, I think yes. So I think yes. I think as more and more people are transferring their data centers from on-prem to cloud, I think SASE has been becoming more and more adopted technology for all the right reasons. One, definitely it gives a lot of flexibility and ease of management to the administration side, as well as I think it also helps you optimize your spend as well, because not only you are kind of consolidating your network and security stacks together, and I'm not talking about the data security, I'm talking about the network and the network security part. Something like traditionally, if you were to talk about like your routers, your firewalls, your VPN gateways, your proxies, all those things, if you kind of put it together, I mean, SASE somewhere utilizes all of those, including CASB, which is probably in the picture because there is cloud. So if you look at all of these, combining that, I think it's an intelligent move, not only from central administration and optimization perspective, but also it, as you mentioned, it also helps you manage the compliances better, because with the SASE platform, the one thing that comes along with that is that you need to take care of your policy once, and then centrally you can apply it across all your users, endpoints, devices, and in a very consistent manner. So all in all, I think SASE is probably definitely a future technology which helps you unify your stacks, which help you centrally manage it, and ensure better compliances and a real-time visibility. So I think all these are the things that are definitely a go-to.
Okay, great. And same question, Vedanath, I'll come to you, because apart from the compliances, when we talk about manufacturing organizations specifically, and their infrastructure have IoT, IT and OT complexity as well. So when these also gets add on, how do you think organizations should move forward?
Right. Yeah. I think if you see, this is very pertinent point of discussion in the modern threat landscape when we are talking about manufacturing sector. If you see, with the advent of Industry 4.0 or later 5.0, these OT systems can't be looked into siloed approach, right? So IT and OT both have to be looked upon from a single glass of paint, because the risk management is something which need to be quantified, taking OT related controls also into access. So when we are talking about SASE adoption, so this is really helping in manufacturing sector also, because with the rapid advancement in digital transformation projects, because if you see manufacturing space, a lot of AI-based opportunities are there. Projects are getting initiated at the manufacturing level, plant level, and even multiple places. If you talk about sales and marketing space, everywhere organizations are trying their hands to adopt where business resilience can be achieved. And for that, obviously, these architecture is something which is converging your network and security requirements. If you talk about, let's understand basically, if you talk about our industry, so we have to set up a new regional marketing offices And for that, if you talk about if a security team and networking team, they are working with a different approach, and then firewall need to be configured and placed into action, and the CISO team need to verify that whether the configurations are rightly managed there or not. It's humongous task. So what we need a converged approach. Obviously, onboarding of any site is so quick. You can do a remote onboarding of a site, or directly you can manage any endpoints without any challenge. And as Ravi said, it is all about the convergence and the policies uniformity. That is something which is the lead of the hour. You can manage it from anywhere, from centralized console, and obviously with the cloud adoption, a lot of other technologies are also getting integrated.
Okay, great. And while all these things are there, there's another technology that has created a lot of buzz and adoption. That is zero trust architecture. And with that thought, Vivek, I'll come to you because BFSI is a sector who has been always a path breaker. I would say they are the very first ones to adopt technology, excel it, and they almost create the most viable case studies for rest of the industries. And when you are integrating zero trust principles into the overall security strategies to enable a dynamic access control, because that becomes very critical when we talk for with respect to BFSI sector. So without creating friction within the internal ecosystem, because obviously data is something which would be having some overlap, some cross-functional access would be requiring. So without creating that friction or say even customer-facing processes, how do you suggest to approach this aspect?
Thanks for this. Good question. So, user experience and zero trust both are both contemporary words because I'm from security background. So early days, security known as roadblocker for the organization. So whenever any request comes to us, the first answer from the security is no, this is not allowed to use because due to security risk. The time has changed. Now we have to work along the business because business has to deliver something as per the time to market. They need access of the AI sites. They need access of the multiple various IT sites also to understand what is going in the market. So what we have done, we have identified critical asset and critical users also. We created different kind of profiles for different kind of users. Like for IT team, different security profile. For finance, different security profile. For the person who is doing an investment function, they have different security profile. We discuss with them, we understand the requirement, what kind of tasks they are doing, whether the tasks are required for the business requirement, the tasks are required for the personal development. Okay, based on that, we implemented our zero trust framework. So what we have done for some kind of functions, we deliver them in static assets. That assets are only allowed to access some such confidential data, some critical application, internal applications like financial data. Those are only access allowed from some specific systems. Those specific system bind with some specific user only. Until unless specific system, specific user, specific IP not met, they are not allowed to access those things. Okay. Now, in terms of zero trust, we enable MFA also. But what we have done change in MFA part, we have enabled policy-based MFA, risk-based policy-based MFA. If the person is coming from some new location, if we change the location from his home to some other site, then only we ask challenge for the MFA part. Otherwise, streamline access for them. Okay. For critical functions like investment functions, they have allowed to access the internal sites, some critical sites or external sites for a specific time period only. If they want to access the sites after business hours, they have to take specific approvals. Those approvals are automated. The approvals go to their department head, then IT head, then automatic access are granted. So to avoid friction between the business and the IT security team, to minimize the time, the resolution time or the time to provide the access, we have done with the automation part. Okay. On endpoint part, what we have done, we enable the micro segmentations. We have restricted the access of endpoint from endpoint to another endpoint. The endpoints are only allowed to access what kind of shared drive they are supposed to access for the time will period only. So we use some kind of security tools, like whatever tools available in the market leaders, we use them. Some kind of scripting we have done from some IT users also.
Okay, great. And Dr. Yusuf, I'll come to you now. Considering large enterprises, there are also concerns, or say you need to give those adaptive access controls because that becomes the need of the hour when we're talking about large enterprises. In such cases, how do we approach a zero trust architecture? Because then it becomes like a floating and someone needs to verify it.
It's a pretty tricky question. Sorry. And it's just not about technology, to be honest, because zero trust is not just technology, it's a mindset, right? You have to have that mindset before you proceed further adopting new age technologies, right? So, understanding the context is most important. Usually, the IT folks or the cybersecurity folks, they don't understand business as they should have been, because zero trust is a very intrusive kind of technology, right? Which means that you will actually hampering the ability of the user to access or not to access something, or a device to connect or not to connect, or an application to be given access to a remote users or a privileged user. So there are a lot of parts that have to be joined together, and it's very easy to say adopt many players, but many technologies, many OEMs. But what it fits into my environment, that is most important. I may be having a great Gartner's quadrant leaders sitting in my technology, but not necessarily they might suit me as an organization, because every organization has its own capacity, its own context. Adaptive access is itself is a pretty challenging task to actually have that, because if you want to enable adaptive access, which means that you need to know your workloads, you need to know who are all access, what period, what time, dynamic access, right? Which means that I give an access today, tomorrow I don't just take off the access. That's what dynamic access is all about, right? Which means that I need to understand the workloads, the payloads, which are actually helping the business to run their operations. So I think the mindset, which is most important, what I believe, because that's where there's always a disconnect between cybersecurity and your IT and your applications. Cybersecurity says, "Oh, look, we need to implement certain controls. The infra or the end user, it will impact mine. I will have number of calls coming into my end users. I will increase my incidents, right? So and then applications team, of course, they don't have much of resources to handle the plethora of issues coming in from the application side. So it's something that need to be created in a way that you create a very cohesive approach involving business, IT, application, cybersecurity, and then come up with a phased approach. Focus on most critical assets, which has a higher probability of being attacked or being compromised, rather than focusing on the entire landscape that you have. That's what I mean.
Great. And as we hear that this is something at times becomes very adaptive, it's floating, and we need to be that much agile when it comes to ensuring that the business objectives are also being fulfilled, ensuring that the security aspects are also being fulfilled at the same time. And with that thought, Rajesh, I'll come to you that, when it comes to Netscope, how are you leveraging SASE and this intelligence together at real time, context aware, making those decisions, and especially when it comes to enterprises who have now either a hybrid or a remote workforce?
So, I think as most of our friends mentioned, first of all, it's a mindset. Me coming from a product side, also understand that on the cyberspace, it's not only product, it's how you're consuming that product, how you're leveraging that product, and aligning with your business needs. That will make a success, right? Because we visit multiple customers, some are happy, some are not happy, okay? But still, the intent is how they're consuming. So if I say on the Netscope side of it, definitely what Netscope has done is they build all their product and platform keeping these frameworks in mind, because these frameworks are built to drive the modern security, okay? Because if you see, we are all in an era where you can still be attacked from a normal mail coming back to your phone, or a normal WhatsApp text coming onto the phone. Just go back 2 weeks back, right? As soon as that India-Pakistan thing started, we all are hearing the cyber attacks. Okay, so we are not in a space just to secure our business. We are also into the space now to secure our country in that level. So these technologies, that's why it's not limited to now, whether you talk about SASE or zero trust, is not limited to now business. Now the government is talking about this, the ministry is talking about it. They are adopting the zero trust architectures. But when I learned zero trust, and I typically use that phrase, which we have very well consumed within Netscope, is what is a zero trust, right? So zero trust is typically as a model comprised of 5 parameters, which are very much aligned with what we do on a normal basis. So we as a user carries an identity, okay? And we all know that identity consolidation is a one bigger project which most of the CISOs and CIOs run. With that identity, we log in into a device. Now that device can be managed, unmanaged, BYOD, and all. And we use certain networks to connect to that device. Now that networks can be an open internet, that can be your Wi-Fi at home. And when we do, we connect to an application. And when we connect to an application, what we do, we exchange certain data. So if we are clear about these 5 parameters, we can build any good zero trust security aligning to our business needs. And that's what Netscope has done. So we have adopted that as a part of zero trust, carrying all these parameters in mind and providing an access wherever the user is, wherever your application is, and still secure your connectivity and data. So that's the core of what Netscope is doing in the industry.
And I would also say, as these solutions become smarter, even the advisories are also becoming smarter. They also try to be like 2 steps ahead of us, and we've seen that even the phishing, very simple exercise with what it used to be a couple of years back, that has also become more complex when it comes to attack that are being done by these adversaries. So what AI enabled mechanism, or say user behavior analytics, are effective when we come to this proactive mitigation of these threats? I think next would be that to understand, and with that, Kumar, I'll again go to you. That when we look at these complexities of as simple activity as phishing, combined with AI-enabled mechanism, or say user behavior analytics, because that is also something which is getting incorporated in the solutions. What are the most effective ways to proactively mitigate them?
Uh, I think phishing is definitely the most odd one, because at the end of the day, I think rest all attacks are on machines, networks. Phishing is the only one which is on humans. So I think on this part, I think the solution lies again in 2 parts. You have to still keep educating your users by way of maybe putting them through various phishing simulation programs, and now there are advanced platforms that help you support that. But coming on to the technology part, as the adversaries are using the AI technology to launch the phishing campaigns, to probably intercept the data and then make interception which is very intelligent. I think on the defense side, I think there are technologies on the email gateway side as well, which are equally kind of competing with that in that space. And there are various technologies, whether it is maybe a content reading, whether it is the behavior analytics, whether it is getting the context of an email which is being sent by an attacker, and in that it is referring to some previous communication, but in actual it has never happened. So I mean, all those AI ML based detections would still continue to play that role, but user awareness again would definitely be the last and the most important thing, as I see.
Vivek, how, if you like to add on what Kumar had said on this, considering the BFSI sector, or in case if there are very specific regulations that you think are in place for that?
So I agree with Ravi, because we don't have enough options, because we are totally dependent on third-party providers. We don't have enough to do in the AI field, because this hacker, they are using AI to sophisticated or to hack is. But from our side, we are totally dependent on third-party providers. What we have done along with the third-party security providers, we created multiple rules. Rules like that keep any email coming from the similar domain, we block from the rule. Suppose my domain name is Access Max Life. So I block all the similar domain mail not coming from that. We block all my top leaders, finance leader, my CEO, CIO, similar mail ID. Mails should not come from this mail ID. we block all the bit.ly links. If any email containing bit.ly link that does go to sendbox, the user has to request IT team that I have got some kind of mail which contains malicious or short link. Should I use or not use? And the last part, user awareness training. You implement all kind of AI. AI, the hacker will find some way of hacking. They will send a sophisticated and customized mail to users, specific to users, that becomes genuine mails. So user awareness is the most important.
Great. Dr. Yusuf, I'll come with the next one. Next one is very specific about data and specifically considering the large enterprises because every segment would have their set of data governance complexity aspects. So data lineage is also becoming critical to governance, risk visibility, and audit readiness. How do you suggest operationalizing the lineage and traceability of sensitive data across the enterprise?
See, data lineage itself is coming a big challenge for any organization because so much of amount of data which is getting processed, used, the information is being used for decision making. And data, especially data lineage, which means that I need to know where the data has come from, how it is being transformed, who is being accessing, and finally is the end, who is consuming the data. So it becomes pretty challenging to actually touch upon every life cycle of the data lineage, starting from where it's coming from. Might be coming from an application, coming from a sensor, right? So how do I know that this data is important for me? So I can't just do everything to protect to every data. I can't do that. So I need to understand, of course, classify the data first, right? What kind of data that is? Is it important for me or not, right? So then, of course, I will see who is accessing it. Is the person is really authorized to access? So, and of course, am I creating an audit trail? Am I collecting the metadata of that file and all? So, especially for the audit trail side, if you know, MCA has actually updated rule 11G, if people are known here, that any accounting system or ERP system must have audit trails, right? And if you're running an ERP which is backed by a database, direct access of a database have to have an audit trail. Now, when it comes to audit trail, usually the DBs say, hey, look, I can't just bombard my database. I can just do it. There's no technology which is available. I can enable a database and audit login. You know, it's practically not. We have been not doing it for years now. But since this compliance has come, people are really auditors are coming that, hey, look, you have to provide that. So there are solutions which need to be actually crafted for that. And then who is actually consuming your data? I think so. These 4 steps of data lineage requires understanding of your data set, right? Protecting the metadata is so important. It's so because I don't want to expose my metadata to an unauthorized person. Because a lot of information gets captured in the metadata, just like we capture telemetry for processing our SIM. In a similar fashion, people who misuse the data, they were looking for such kind of metadata to actually just and it's a pretty challenging area, right? Because when you talk about user behavior analytics, right, UBA, people who are resigning for the organization, see their behavior has drastically changed the moment they resign. People start first looking, how can I get this data out from my organization, right? So it's becoming pretty challenging to address, and even though you ask and you make them aware that, hey, look, this is a pawn wrong, they continue to find different ways to exfiltrate the data, right? You are given LinkedIn to do a professional post, they're using it to upload sensitive data in the chat box of the LinkedIn. So that people are finding so many different ways to exfiltrate data. So that's what I think.
These internal threats are the most impacting aspects.
It's more challenging, and then you have to react. There's a lot of effort which actually gets collected in order to do the investigations, right? Then you, so a lot of challenges are there, but I think data lineage is going to be very important because the amount of data which is getting generated in AI definitely will help in this aspect. Collecting this metadata lineages because there's a lot of information and the processing which is needed. So I think AI would really help us to actually manage this entire show.
Okay, great. Bedanath, if you would like to add upon considering any different or specific unique challenge that comes when it comes to manufacturing sector.
Yeah, of course, if you see, Pratik, of course, this DPDP compliance requirements, this is something which is very important and foundational requirement for every organization. When we talk about data lineage, right? So we have to come up with we need to understand first the challenges and then we have to come up with the pertinent solutions as well. So if you talk about data lineage, so the important thing is how we are going to metadata based overall discovery of the data, because you can't predict and classify the data without doing the discovery, because in manufacturing space, if you see, the critical data is in the form of unstructured data, like AutoCAD files and all those IPs of the manufacturing, they are completely unstructured. So you have to come with a metadata-based discovery approach where we are looking into all sort of structured and unstructured data classification, and then we have to take out what all data are sensitive ones. And of course, then obviously when you have identified that, then data mapping is something which is very important, right? When you have to do that, you need to understand that the source of the system or data, like for example, in our case, if you talk about CRM or ERP, they are generating the data, but it's not about the origin of the data, how the data is being transported to the final destination. That is something which is very important, and it has to be governed across the life cycle. So, for example, if data which is getting consumed in the data analytics platform, in our case, it's always come from any source of like CRM or ERP, right? Core ERP. So those data in between, if it is getting some sort of transportation where the data is getting updated or appended, and finally reaching to the final destination source in terms of dashboards. So these all need to be governed, and of course, this is something in these days we can't talk about the DLPs as only about the data protection. So we have to look into data in rest controls, data in motion control, and data in usage controls as well. That is something. That's why DSPM concepts are evolving now as part of the SASE architecture itself. So earlier, if you see, as part of the SASE, classification was the core fundamental practice, and then you just use DLP policies, whether it is about your cloud DLP or network DLP, endpoint DLP, or email DLP. So multiple stacks are there in the DLP stack also, because applications are essentially pinned now. You have to understand how you have to do those all activities. So data lineage, of course, this is something which is very important and foundational pillar when we are talking about end-to-end traceability of the data from one system to the final system.
And definitely after getting these feedback from our panelists, we now definitely would agree more that data governance, data management and security will continue to become the strategic strongholds in terms of investment across enterprises. So, Brajesh, after hearing in terms of the data lineage, the criticality of its governance and security, and compliance, it's a major concern. How does Netscope enable enterprises to classify, monitor, and govern this sensitive data without impacting the business agility?
Yeah. So anyhow,
We have to keep it short because
yeah,
the buzzer is on.
yeah. So when Netscope definitely focused on SASE, without a data intelligence, it doesn't matter. Bring that view, right? So when we sit across as a part of a SASE framework, whether as a part of an agent or an agentless or through an API, the intent is how we bring that data lifecycle view end to end to a customer, starting from a discovery to a classification to prioritization and then to protection. So we take care of that. But the one aspect I think which is very critical, and when a CISO needs to present to the board, is what are the risks associated with that data? Because there are so many data sets which are available. And you can't say that risk of the every data will be similar, right? As Yusuf mentioned, that there are certain business critical data. So we make sure that when you touch a data, we identify, classify, and give you a risk of that which is overly exposed and may falling into a compliance category of a DPDP or may falling into a category of a PCI DSS, right? So attaining a risk associated to data exposure and a compliance, that's where the AI run across the data layer. and provides you that view. So that's where Netscope bring that intelligence across the SASE and the data frameworks.
That's great, and I hope the session really helped you. And Netscope team would definitely be here. You can definitely get in touch with them, and it's very clear that every day you and your enterprise is generating data. There's the evolution of your internal infrastructure, the criticality, the complexity is also increasing, and these cutting edge technologies are definitely here to help us. It's just understanding how to leverage them correctly. That would be the key aspects. Thank you so much, everyone, for being lovely audience, and thank you, panelists, for sharing your wonderful insights with us.